Hey guys, Kevin here with eTrailer, and today I'm going to be showing you how to install the Curt adjustable trailer hitch receiver here on our 2016 Keystone Hideout Travel trailer. So one of the most important steps in choosing the correct adjustable trailer hitch receiver for your trailer is to measure from one frame beam over to the next one. And you're going to want to measure from the inside to the inside if you have an I-beam trailer. So with ours today, if I measure across, I'm going to end up getting roughly 68.5 inches from the inner beam to inner beam. So I can go ahead and I can take that and go back to our fit guide and find the correct size adjustable trailer hitch. All right, just to give you a bit of an idea with some measurements here of where this is going to end up sitting. So if you measured from the top of your I-beam bracket down, the center of the receiver is going to be about 4 inches down. So you can take that and get a rough estimate. From there, if you came out, so from the back side of our receiver tube to all the way up to that front lip, it's right about 11 inches. And also from the center of our hitch pin hole to the inner edge right here before that lip, it's 2 inches. And with that lip, it's about 2.5, roughly. So you can kind of guess exactly what you're going to be able to fit in here, because a lot of times the actual trailer body kind of overhangs a little bit more than what the I-beams really go down to. So you may have some issues if you're trying to stick a cargo carrier or a bike rack on there, if you were wanting to actually flip it up too. So if you had a longer shank on that accessory, you would be able to probably get it up in there and kind of fold it up. This hitch comes with a nice high gloss black powder coating to prevent rust, scratches, any kind of corrosion that you'd have over time. It utilizes a 5/8 inch hitch pin. It does not come with one, so you would have to order one separately. In my opinion, definitely go ahead and pick up one of the locking ones. That way you don't have to worry about anyone taking off with your bike rack or your cargo carrier. It also has these nice loops for safety chains if you did have this on a fifth wheel instead. The mounting brackets for this hitch are going to fit a C channel, a box frame, or a I-beam frame like what we have on our trailer today. It does come with a 3,500 pound towing capacity and 350 pound tongue weight capacity. Now if you were looking for something a little bit higher, typically when we get this kind of question on the expert side, I usually see it for cargo carriers because people are hauling a large generator, or they just have a lot of stuff that they really need to put on there and it's going to be too heavy. But when you start getting in the higher capacity ones, it does start to shrink down. So you really got to look at that frame width and make sure that you actually have the right one. And then from there, then you can start picking through and picking whatever is the highest tongue weight capacity. So when figuring out our placement for our brackets, we realized that we are going to come into contact with the beam that holds our bumper. Not only that, but our receiver tube is also going to be blocked by the bumper, but our neighbor today is totally fine with that because they're going to have it notched out right here because they're just using it as a little bit of a storage for their drain tube for their black tank. So what we're going to have to do is kind of cut down our cross member as well, just because it comes in at 68.5 inches, but we only have 66.5 inches from this beam to the other side of our other beam. So what we're going to do right now is just take off 1 inch and just probably about 1/8 on each side as well, just so that it's not super skin tight. You know, it's okay if we have like a little bit extra, but we want to make sure that we can easily get this in, because while you're mounting this up, you're going to have to stick both brackets up onto your cross beam, hold that up in place, and then slide the brackets up against the I-beams of your trailer frame. So it'll make it a little bit easier if we're not skin tight and kind of rubbing against that beam that's already there. So what I've gone ahead and done is slip my brackets onto my cross tube, and I've got it held up in place, and I've just kind of pushed the brackets all the way out, and then I've got them at the end of our I-beam as far as I can go, because we're going to want to get this as far out as we can so that when we hook up accessories, say bike rack, cargo carrier, or anything like that, we don't want that to come into contact with the body of our trailer. So on top of that, I've also gone ahead and I've measured from the edge of our bracket up to our bumper, and I've got an even 8 1/4 on both sides, so we know that our hitch is in here nice and square. What I'm going to go ahead and do now is just take a paint marker and I'm going to color in all of the spots where I need to drill into our I-beam, and then we can go ahead and lower this back out of the way and make our drill marks. So for our holes, we're gonna have to make it up to a 17/32 size drill bit, but we don't want to sit here and just grind that out with that. That's going to take forever trying to cut through your frame rails. So start off with a real small bit and kind of work your way up. As you go, it's going to kind of cut through it like butter. Instead, you'll just kind of keep sizing it bigger and bigger. Or if you wanted to, you could also go ahead and use a step bit. But we're going to go ahead, I'm going to start my smallest bit out right in the center of my markings. And we can just keep sizing it up. You will want to make sure that you're wearing some eye protection while you're doing this, and possibly some ear protection as well. A lot of that noise kind of vibrates off of the frame rails and it can be pretty loud down here. Now that we got this one through, we can go ahead and just do the same process for each of our holes on this side as well as on our other side. So along with our side 4 bolts, we're also supposed to be putting 2 on this top lip right here. The only problem is our I-beam lip only comes out to about 1/4 of the way through our eyelet hole there. So in place of that, our neighbor is going to go ahead and have a fabricator weld the bottom side of this just to give it some extra protection, make sure that it's going to be up to its rating. And then on top of that, it's also going to be a little bit too hard to really get in here and drill, because we'd be drilling through that lip and then into that beam that we have for our bumper. So if for whatever reason you cannot get that in there, I definitely recommend having a professional weld that on. In your kit, you're going to have these carriage bolts, you're going to have multiple spacers, and some locking flange nuts. You're going to go ahead and put one of your spacers on your bolt. You'll slip that through the frame bracket. On the other side of your I-beam, you're going to go ahead and slide on that other spacer, and then your flange nut. With an extra set of hands, go ahead and lift your hitch back up into place. So I'm slipping in all my carriage bolts here. When you're also, I wanted to just note that when you're putting on these spacers, there is a bit of a rounded edge on it and then a flatter edge. Go ahead and make sure that you put that flatter edge against your frame brackets here. And then I'm going to go ahead and stick my spacers on the other side and our flange nuts. So the next step is going to be centering our cross tube into our brackets. Since we already measured this and cut it exactly to fit these bumper frame beams right here, we already know it's centered. We don't have to do that. Also, since we have this already mounted in place, we're not really going to be able to easily just pull this tube out. It is pretty much skin tight on each end, and you won't be able to kind of slide it either way to get it out of the bracket. So what we're going to do now is drill into 2 of the holes that we have in our frame bracket through our cross tube. Now there is one on the front and the back, and it's pretty close to the actual bracket itself. And then there's one on the top and the bottom, and that's kind of farther out here. Gives you enough room so that you can get your drill bit on each one of these so you can drill all the way through. So what we're going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and just do the front and the back. I feel like we got enough space in here really. So we're going to go ahead and just do that same method we used drilling through our I-beam with those smaller drill bits, and just kind of working our way up so that we can easily just cut right through there. So we are going to be reusing the same bolts that we already had in our kit, but they don't really want to sit inside of this tube too well. They are just a little bit too long. I did end up talking with one of the technicians from Curt, and he was going to make sure that the kit got kind of updated and changed over with some shorter bolts, just because once we get this up inside of here, we also have a spacer that's going to sit in there, and trying to get all that in there, the bolt's just too long, doesn't want to fit in there. So in the meantime, I've just gone ahead and used an angle grinder and cut that down. And then while you're doing that, if that is what you have to do, go ahead and make sure that you put on your flange nut. Just kind of work it down a bit, get it out of the way. And then when you make that cut, kind of round the edges along the end of the bolt, and then try and back that off. And just kind of back it off and put it back on a few times. And what that does is it kind of cleans out the threads. And then once you have it how you need it to be, we're going to go ahead and take our fish wire. So, and actually I'm going to throw on our spacer first. We'll then screw on our fish wire. And once that is in place, then we can go ahead, we're just going to take the other end of our wire, put it through the end of our receiver tube, and then out our specific hole that we're going to be putting our bolt into. We'll pull that through. And I found it a little bit easier just because we have this other beam in the way, just to get our spacer in first. Obviously, if you don't have a beam in the way and this is wide open, it'd be super easy for you. You can just drop it right in there. But I have to kind of fight it just a little bit more than you normally would. Get that up in place. And then we can kind of undo our fish wire. They only give you 2 of these, so don't go pulling on it too hard because then you'll end up kind of stripping it out and then you won't be able to reuse it for the other bolts. Put on our spacer, and I'm just going to hold my finger there on the back side while I get this kind of tightened up just so that we don't lose it. And I'm just going to go hand tight for now. Once we're done with all of the bolts, then we can come back and just torque all of them down at the same time. I think I want to have my spacer going the other way. There's no real indicator on the instructions for which way it needs to face, but I just kind of prefer it to be facing towards the center of our trailer. So I was hoping I'd be able to stick our shortened bolt in on the other side, but what I'm finding is that even while we have it cut down shorter, the head of that bolt is still kind of rubbing against the head of the bolt that we already have in place, and it's just really not going to fit. Honestly, these holes should have been just kind of off-centered a little bit. So what we're going to do is we have our one right here on the side. There are also holes on the top and bottom. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this bottom hole. We'll drill that out, and then we'll have 2 bolts in there without having them coming anywhere near each other. So they're not going to come into contact. We'll still have one on our side and on our top and bottom, and then it's going to be nice and secure in place, and we don't have to fight it as hard as we would have. Now that we have all of our bolts in place, we're going to go ahead and torque these down to the settings that are listed on your instruction page. Now that we have all of our bolts torqued down to spec, that will do it for our installation of the Curt adjustable trailer hitch receiver here on our 2016 Keystone Hideout Travel trailer.